Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of The View co-host Sonny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing and by the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation, and names him among nearly 200 defendants in one of New York's largest RICO cases.
For more, we go to our chief Sonny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Sonny Hostin believed her toughest day was behind her, until Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus swept in like a storm of sharp wit, turning the spotlight into a blaze of unfiltered comedy mayhem. Her husband's $450 million courtroom fiasco was just the warm-up. What followed was a roast so brutal it could have bent steel. Tyrus came in swinging, Gutfeld didn't even blink, and Sonny, her silence was so chilling it could have earned her an Oscar for Best Performance in a Public Meltdown.
Only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, you know, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, you know, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she...
For years, Sonny Hostin marched onto The View like the self-appointed high priestess of justice. Gavel in one hand, righteousness in the other. She wasn't just sharing opinions. She was delivering verdicts. One wrong word and you were cast out like some brunch outlaw. But then karma came crashing through her studio door, waving a blazing subpoena. The queen of courtroom commentary suddenly found herself trapped in the middle of her own scandal. A staggering $450 million legal bombshell.
That will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people. And this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racist on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, you know, Emily.
If you're enjoying this takedown, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Bring on the irony and grab your popcorn, because Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus revved up their sarcasm engines like they were gearing up to roast Mount Olympus itself. For years, Sonny built her image on outrage at full blast. Dramatic gasps, judgmental pauses, and moral fury delivered right on cue. But now, with her husband allegedly caught up in a financial disaster massive enough to make FTX look like a school bake sale, she's suddenly whispering about privacy and clutching at due process. Unbelievable. The very same woman who pounced on every conservative misstep is now pleading with the world to mind its own business.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sonny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sonny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sonny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from...
When others found themselves in the hot seat, Sonny was ruthless, tossing judgments like confetti at a scandal parade. But now that her own husband is under fire, silence. The same woman who once filled the airwaves with courtroom sermons has slipped into the shadows of her own crisis. And right on cue, Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus arrived, loaded with enough sarcasm to cause a city-wide blackout. They didn't just call her out, they locked onto the hypocrisy like it was prime steak. This wasn't just a takedown, it was a scorching satire with Sonny caught dead center.
Makes Sonny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the View's gravitational pull.
The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Greg Gutfeld, the undisputed king of media takedowns, looked like he was throwing a party live on air. And Tyrus? He might as well have brought marshmallows to roast over the ashes of Sonny's credibility. This $450 million scandal went off like dynamite. Allegations of financial chaos so massive they made Enron look like a typo. Mismanagement, fraud, disaster. The accusations stacked higher than a View argument about Trump. And Sonny, suddenly speechless. Her fire fizzled into static. The woman who once shredded lawsuits like a hawk circling prey now clung to no comment like a life raft. Gutfeld turned it all into a full-blown roast, with hypocrisy served up as the punchline, scorching hot.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sonny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter. So instead...
Let's be honest, if hypocrisy were an Olympic event, Sonny just snagged the gold medal. Gutfeld ripped into her double standards like a kid tearing into presents on Christmas morning. And right on his heels came Tyrus, sharpening his verbal blade with a smirk. When he finally struck, the hit landed with force. Every jab cut clean through Sonny's paper-thin moral armor. He didn't just highlight the scandal. He ripped apart the smugness, exposed the hollow righteousness, and left her credibility in shambles. When the self-crowned queen of outrage dropped her tiara, Tyrus was there to snatch it, only to toss it straight into the flames. And the rest of The View? Dead silent. Joy Behar looked pale as a sheet. Whoopi Goldberg barely twitched. The same women who once exploded over a conservative slip-up suddenly forgot how to speak. Their silence screamed louder than any rant they'd ever unleashed.
Sure, all that, and the price of butter. Sonny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, asking that question, it might have been a closer election. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be. This should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last. They call them Hitler. They call these things. America rejected them, and instead of coming back and saying we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball to Sonny.
But when a $450 million scandal came crashing down on one of their own, suddenly it was all whispers about context and nuance. How convenient. Meanwhile, social media erupted. Memes flew across timelines like wildfire, and Twitter didn't just roast Sonny, it torched her credibility to ashes. Gutfeld never skipped a beat. He zoomed out and went after the bigger target: media elitism. The kind where public figures demand accountability, just not when it's aimed at them. That so-called moral high ground crumbled right beneath Sonny's designer heels. Gutfeld slammed The View for its sudden magical case of silence. Where did all that fire for truth disappear to? And Tyrus? He dropped a one-liner so dry it could dehydrate a cactus, laughing at the absurdity of it all. Sonny, once the self-styled dispenser of legal wisdom, now allegedly scrambling to shield her husband from a financial collapse. Her moral compass spinning like a carnival ride caught in a thunderstorm.
End of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm going to go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Really? You think? No?
No, I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any, is she said, well, I guess that's just what they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
And the most outrageous part? The View acted like it never even happened. Not a word, not a whisper. They'll spend half an hour dissecting celebrity breakups, but when a $450 million scandal blows up in Sonny's own backyard, instant blackout. Was it class, or just raw fear? You decide. Gutfeld wrapped things up with a sarcastic mic drop worthy of the Hall of Fame, slyly suggesting that maybe, just maybe, Sonny should stop by his show to talk about accountability. The invite was dripping with sarcasm and shaded so heavy it could block out daylight. And Tyrus? He just stared straight into the camera with that smug grin that screamed, "Told you so." But here's the real twist. This wasn't just about Sonny. It was about the media machine as a whole. These hosts shout about justice and ethics until the spotlight swings back on them. Then suddenly, it's not about truth. It's about staging a cover-up. They preach law like it's scripture, until their own commandments are exposed for what they really are. Scribbles on a napkin.
It's not even that. In The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sonny, and the, was it Bette Midler? What's her name? The broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back.
Sonny's defenders came charging in, shouting that she can't be blamed for her husband's choices. On the surface, that sounds fair. But this is the same woman who spent years dissecting the families of her political opponents like a one-woman investigative unit. And now she wants mercy? That's not just a double standard. It's a triple-stacked hypocrisy burger with a side of denial. And here's the kicker. The storm is only getting started. More revelations are bound to erupt, and Sonny may have to do more than sulk behind a coffee mug during commercial breaks. Maybe she'll roll out a carefully scripted apology, or vanish on a sabbatical to nowhere. One thing's for sure, her credibility didn't just crack, it went up in flames. And The View. Let's not kid ourselves, it was never a cathedral of journalistic purity. This scandal shredded the last scraps of its disguise. Now the world sees it for what it really is. A panel of performers scrambling like soap opera actors to protect one of their own. Honesty and accountability? Forget it. These women could trip over their own contradictions and still find a way to blame Republicans. Reflection, growth, humor? Please. That's about as likely as Sonny filing her husband's court papers live on air.
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
If The View had a scandal mute button, Sunny Hostin slammed it so hard the desk probably cracked. Because this time, her entire reputation was at stake. The same woman who could rant endlessly about politics, injustice, or even a bad tweet suddenly couldn't string together a single sentence about a $450 million courtroom disaster starring her own husband. Coincidence? Sure. And maybe Pigs just launched a fashion line. Gone were the fiery lectures. Gone were the legal buzzwords. Sunny, usually brimming with outrage, had morphed into a blinking, silent error screen. Viewers were stunned as she fumbled with her cards like evidence in a trial, delivering a performance that felt less like journalism and more like a silent soap opera. Every nervous sip from her oversized mug, every stiff glance, screamed one thing. Don't ask me about the criminal circus crashing through my front door. Her body language told the entire story. Arms folded like a tax audit, shoulders locked up like courtroom furniture. One moment she was nodding like a professor grading law students. The next she was staring into space, as if her innocence were floating somewhere above the ceiling tiles.
She is shaming descendants of this. Will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Somewhere between Whoopi's heavy sighs and Joy Behar's endless monologues, Sunny sat frozen like someone had just flashed her husband's bail conditions across the teleprompter. And every time a topic even brushed up against corruption or scandal, she suddenly found the studio floor fascinating. Her face practically screamed, "Beam me out of here." It was like she half believed the carpet might split open and swallow her whole. And Greg Gutfeld? He didn't miss a thing. Every awkward twitch, every strained smile, he clocked it all. And if there's one thing about Gutfeld, it's this. He never misses. Normally, Sunny would barrel in with a booming, "Actually, that's not how due process works." But this time, the only thing she defended was her poker face. Too bad due process had just come knocking at her own front door. The woman who once dominated debates with sheer volume now looked like a human screensaver, blinking, sipping, and praying not to get called out. Viewers were glued, waiting for her to break and shout, "Objection!" Maybe even at her own reflection. But the silence wasn't composure. It was panic, frozen in motion.
kind of went in a different direction. But I love the fact that, you know, Manny is younger and he's
How
very
much younger is he?
Just a little bit.
He's like 1 year, isn't he? Like a month or a year or 10 years or
5 years. It's more than a year.
Oh.
Anyway, it's not about me. I think
no.
I think that it's very helpful that he's handy, and when we travel, I'm not picking up any bags. He's the one that's hefting them overhead. He throws the garbage out.
Right.
He does the heavy.
Sorry, Sonny, but you can't cross-examine Karma. And while she clutched that coffee mug like it held all the answers, Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus delivered the guilty pleasure America didn't even know it was waiting for. In a world drowning in double standards and staged virtue, seeing one of the loudest voices suddenly go silent wasn't just entertaining. It was justice with a punchline. Will Sonny bounce back? Probably. The View loves a comeback, as long as it fits their script. She might even spin the disaster into a growth moment, and strut onto a TED stage with a line like, "When public shame knocks, smile." But until then, the memes won't stop, the laughter won't fade, and Gutfeld and Tyrus will keep circling the wreckage like vultures with microphones. Because when you build a career handing out moral verdicts, the gavel always swings back. And for Sonny, it didn't just swing, it crushed the smugness right off her resume. So next time The View rolls out one of its oh-so-righteous lectures, just remember, even the loudest voices can choke on their own scripts, especially when Gutfeld and Tyrus are standing by with receipts and a mic. And just when it seemed the circus had packed up, the spotlight whipped back with even greater force, dragging Sonny deeper into the glare she couldn't escape. She wasn't just dodging questions anymore. She was suffocating in the silence she once weaponized against others. Every sarcastic smirk from Gutfeld, every razor-dry jab from Tyrus, landed like thunderclaps shaking a studio already cracking under the weight of hypocrisy. The irony was blinding. For years, Sonny branded herself as the voice of moral clarity, dissecting scandals with the precision of a surgeon and the flair of a judge. But now, the same woman who demanded transparency was hiding behind shadows thicker than a courtroom curtain. Each blink became a confession. Each forced smile, a piece of evidence. Each nervous shuffle, a meme waiting to explode across timelines. The cameras didn't just record her, they betrayed her, freezing every flinch into a national punchline. And the audience wasn't sympathetic, they were spellbound. They leaned closer with every moment, watching the self-proclaimed queen of justice unravel in real time. This wasn't debate anymore. It wasn't commentary. It was theater at its most ruthless. Gutfeld grinned like the ringleader of a scandal carnival. Tyrus swung his words like blades. And Sonny. She wasn't the commentator, the judge, or the critic anymore. She was the headline act, the main attraction in a downfall everyone saw coming, but no one dared to stop. Because in the end, this wasn't just another TV spectacle. It was a cultural reckoning dressed up as comedy. The audience didn't just laugh, they howled. They didn't just watch, they devoured. And Sonny Hostin, once the untouchable voice of outrage, became the cautionary tale America couldn't stop talking about.